Today's topic is our most important personal training assessments. And I think the first question I'm going to fire at you, James, is should personal trainers assess?
It's always the old thing. If you don't assess, you're just guessing most of the time. But as I think we've spoken about on previous podcasts, I think we have three options we have now. We have no assessments, mini assessments, and full assessments, because it depends on when the client comes into you, what sort of state they're in and what type of person they are. Some people love the assessments, therefore we've got the full assessment system that we use all the time. But then you have the middle assessment, which is the middle ground, where we'd like to have at least everyone come into. But then some people just hate assessments, and you just have to be mindful of that. It's not where we want them to be, but we have to be mindful of this to make sure that we don't put them off, and we try and educate them over the long haul to maybe build them up to assessments later down the line. Or in some cases, you can just tell that some people should not be assessed. And I'm talking about this with some of our clients who have been morbidly obese in the past. We're not going to assess them and make them feel terrible about themselves, are we? We're going to try and help them as best as we can. Their biggest assessment is basically they need to walk more. That's essentially what we're trying to look at. Very simple terms in that sense. But yeah, so in answer, it depends. Mostly, yes.
Indeed. I was going to say that it's always good to have a system to follow. As you say, yes, if we know someone's just not right for the assessments, we're not going to put them through them because, as you said, we don't want them to feel bad about themselves. But we've got a system in place, which means, okay, what are the basics then? Walking, water, sleep. So I think that's important to point out, because when I came out of, I've mentioned this a few times, PT school, we'd done assessments, but there was no system to it. Really, I had no framework to hang it on, so I did the overhead squat test, and I did a balance test, and just various things. But every time I got a client, I was just like, oh God, what do I do? And then once I've done these assessments, what do I do after that? So it's not just having assessments; it's then having a system and a framework to hang it on afterwards, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the system and framework we try and teach everyone. So, like for us, in very simple layman's terms, we look at it in 4 quadrants: health, movement, strength, and cardio. Health comes first. Health comes first is our motto, our mantra.
Our mantra?
You just without your health, you have nothing. Yeah, that too, yeah. That too. Without your health, you have nothing, essentially. So we had to break it down because, there's so many good ways of assessing people, so many different ways to skin a cat, essentially, that we had to think of a system that works for us, but works both in person and online. So when it comes down to the question of what are our most important personal training assessments, it comes to health, because at the health side of things is where we can make a bigger difference to people in terms of their everyday life, and where we get the most enjoyment sometimes out of it. If people change their life or discover things they never even thought about before that potentially life-threatening, as we have had in the past, that there to us are the most important personal training assessments that we do, and it's the ones that people don't tend to do to a system or often enough, basically.
I think we're talking about health, and we'll come on to the assessments in a second. Might surprise people because they might have been expecting us to say some sort of squat test or deadlift or bench or 5k run or something like that, and we do have those tests further down the line. But absolutely, for us within our system, health absolutely comes first, because, as you said, James, if you don't have health, you don't have anything. So we'll come on to the first test. One of our most important tests is the breath test. James, what is the breath test, and why on earth do we do it?
Yeah, exactly. So the breath test is a gateway to see how healthy you are. Breathing is very fashionable at the moment. There's lots of books come out. The original I read was Oxygen Advantage.
I'd love breathing. It's really fashionable. I've always done it.
We know, it's great, isn't it? It's great. But it's also the hardest thing to talk to people about, because they've done it all their lives. They don't think they're doing it dysfunctionally. So when you tell them you're doing it dysfunctionally, they look at you with a weird look on your face going, what the hell are you on about, you mentalist? Basically, that's what you're going to try and get over. So basically, with our breath test, it's based from Patrick McEwen's work on Oxygen Advantage. It's a CO2 breathing test that's telling to see how well your body can deal with CO2 in the body, which is then tells us how well you're processing breathing, and also how well your diaphragm is working. Because most people are what we call mouth breathers. They breathe from their mouth, which means they're not using their diaphragm. And the diaphragm is the most important muscle to help stabilize everything within the core, lower back, and relieve back pain and all these good stuff. And CO2, the higher your tolerance is, the longer you can perform, faster and healthier you are. In a short, that's a bastardized way of saying and talking about it, but that's a very simple way to put it. So breathing is the most important thing, but it's also one of the hardest to convince people that they need to be doing it. So
it is, but as you say, it is so important because I think the diaphragm is a muscle. It needs to be trained like any other muscle, and I think it's a hugely overlooked component within people's training. So I think that is a really, really important one to think about. The next one, resting heart rate. I think it's probably obvious why this is important, but go for it.
Metabolic diseases, cardiovascular diseases, most people have a high resting heart rate unless they have a medical condition that states otherwise that they aren't aware of. Like they think, my heart rate's normal, but then that's for normal doctors' terms and that's for everyday people who are like really ill and stuff. So if you have a resting heart rate over 60, I think you have issues, personally. That's what I'm going to argue. You're not cardiovascularly fit enough, you're prone to metabolic disease, and you're prone to cardiovascular issues at some point, heart attack, stroke, etc., etc. So for us, understanding your resting heart rate is key to understanding how good your aerobic system is and how well your body's recovering, so we can give you the right advice to get you training it properly so you can recover faster and be healthier in the long term.
As soon as we see that in the assessments, instant red flag, cardio, walking, let's get that resting heart rate under 60 as soon as we can, so it always becomes a priority. Waist to height ratio. Now, we used to do waist to hip ratio in PT school, but waist to height ratio. Talk to us a little bit about why that's important, James.
Yeah, waist to height ratio, again, it comes down to metabolic disease. There's so many studies out there that show that if your waist is over half your height, you are severely prone to metabolic disease, thus reducing your lifespan, thus impacting your health span at the same time. And you're not going to perform at all, are you, in terms of like athleticism if your waist is over half it, which means you're carrying too much weight. So it's a great test, hundreds of thousands of data points behind this, medically approved, and we look at this going, it's a really good simple test that people can apply, and it tells us straight away, is this client overweight or not? There's no messing around it, and the data is too strong to back it up.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say there's so much data out there to back it up. It's a really good one to test. So I would say if you are still doing waist to hip ratio, I would switch to waist to height ratio because there's so much data to back it up. And talking of data, the Brazilian, give it its full title, the Brazilian sit and rise test. Talk us through that one. Another longevity test.
Exactly. It's all longevity tests, I think, if people should see the pattern coming here now. Again, let's see how mobility impacts longevity. So it's a simple test. Can you sit down on the floor and get back up again without using your hands? You lose a point for every part of the body that touches the floor while doing so. But again, it's just, hundreds of thousands of data points that show that the more your mobility is restricted long term, the more impacts your lifespan. So I think something crazy, if you score less than 5 points, your lifespan is less than 15 years that of other people. So it's incredibly important. But it tells us how well you move and how well and how long potentially you could live, all things being well.
Yeah. What is it for? I lost you for a second there. Is it for every point you get back, it's an extra 5 years? Is it? I think.
Something along those lines. For every point you get back is extra 5 years. So it is. So it's like, but if you get 5 points and under, it's like 15, 20 years less than other people who score 8 plus, basically.
Exactly. So give it a go. Sit down on the floor, stand back up, give yourself a score out of 10, and let us know how you get on. The next one, and this one is really important for runners, especially the single leg balance test.
Well, you can't stand or balance on shaky foundations, can you? And it's all about proprioceptive awareness underfoot. Again, not a sexy test. People don't realize how important it is. But again, it's like a handbrake. If your stability and vestibular system is switched off and not working properly, it's acting like a handbrake on the rest of the body. Therefore, we need to optimize it. Make sure you are balancing effectively because it impacts everything else that you do. Also in terms of health. And in terms of health, think about how many falls elderly people have. So we can make sure they're stable enough, and then also they have the balance to maybe reduce the number of falls later on in life too. So again, healthy, athletes, yes, absolutely, but also for the long-term health of everyday people too.
And just to say, that is with your eyes closed. It's not just standing on one leg, so it makes it much more much more difficult. So stand on one leg, close your eyes, make sure you don't fall into anything, and see how long you can get. Over 15 seconds is our absolute bare minimum, but ideally, especially if you're a runner, we want you to get over 30 seconds on each side. And then finally, the hang test, which is a grip strength test, which is also linked to longevity. See a theme? We're seeing a theme, James.
It's a big theme. It's a longevity theme, because that's all we're trying to help people, is help be healthier, fitter, stronger. And it comes down with health first. So again, your grip strength tells us a lot about your shoulder health, but it also tells us so much about your overall health and longevity. Again, we go back to the studies. Keep going back to all of these studies, and it talks about health, and that's what we're focusing on. Fitness should be all about health. And yes, there's an element of performance, and we want to perform better, but let's bring it back to what we should be doing, and that is the health aspect to help us live long and prosper like the Vulcans in Star Trek.
Oh, look at you getting a Star Trek reference in there at the end. Shame it wasn't a Star Wars one, but I'll let you off.
Next time.
So next time, absolutely. So that is it for today. Give those assessments a go and let us know how you get on. If you want to find out more about our system of training, you can go to strengthmatters.com/system.